Well, hello, race fans. Welcome to another brand new week here on the Road to Indy Insider Live. My name is Rob Howden, the voice of the Road to Indy, presented by Cooper Tires. Thank you so much for tuning into the YouTube page. A lot going on right now. I think we all know that with the way the season kind of pushed late into the year of 2020, it at the start shortened our off season, so we kind of waited for some of the announcements to start rolling out. Now we push off from what would have been the opening weekend of March, would have been the Grand Prix of St. Petersburg. We don't get started now till the second half of April at Abel Motorsports Park. So we got a bunch of like a flurry of announcements, and then things held off a bit, and there's more announcements coming. And as the announcements start coming out, I'll try to grab the drivers so that we can have here on the Road to Indy Insider Live. We've talked to some great guys over the last couple of weeks. Eli Navarro will be a rookie this year for D-Force Racing in USF 2000, as will Hunter Yaney for Velocity Racing Development. He'll be running in the Indy Pro 2000 class. I'm going to stay with that kind of middle level of the Road to Indy for this particular edition of the Insider Live. Joining me here today from Kentucky will be the 19-year-old Jacob Abel, coming back for another full-time season. Looking forward to that. Let's bring Jacob in here. He's at home. Let's bring him into the show. Jacob, thanks for joining me here on the Insider Live.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Rob. It's always good chatting with you.
I always like seeing those tracks in the background. You know, you never know what background we'll get, right? Some guys like to stand in front of their trophies. Hunter had a big Ferrari flag behind him. You got the tracks you like. I like that a lot. That's classy. Let's just get things underway. Well, like we do with all these shows, and remember the concept is, of course, to try to introduce you to the fans that are part of the Road to Indy and NTT IndyCar Series fans, trying to find that new young guy or girl to follow coming up the ranks. We'll get into your origin story. Let's just first and foremost talk about how excited you have to be. Testing underway, full season this year in the Indy Pro 2000 Championship.
Yeah, definitely really looking forward to it. This year especially, we kind of have a reformed Abel Motorsports team. We'll kind of get into that later, I'm sure. But a lot of good things headed for 2021 here. Coming off of last year was a little bit of a bummer because it had similar levels of equipment. Just to kind of have everything pushed back and delayed, and then are we really racing this weekend? Is things getting canceled and that? So it's nice to have a little bit of consistency, even with St. Pete being pushed back. Like, that's okay. It's nice to have something to really look forward to and work up to again this season with testing and things like that. So definitely really looking forward to it. It should be super good.
So let's jump in first and foremost. Let's talk about your career. I always ask the question, you know, when did the spark for motorsports first get ignited within you? You know what I mean? I know some people, it's their parents raced. Some parents just watched Formula One or IndyCar or NASCAR with their kid, whatever it may have been. I know that you don't have that big, super deep karting career. You didn't start when you were, you know, a fetus. You weren't, you know, a 1-year-old in a kid cart. How did it start for you? When did you first start racing? And give me the origin story.
You know, I always sort of grew up with kind of being surrounded by motors and racing stuff. I actually grew up riding dirt bikes, racing dirt bikes, things like that. So that's sort of my origin. I think I was talking about this the other day. My first dirt bike when I was 3 years old, actually. So kind of similar to the kid carts. But yeah, I've always kind of been a motorhead. And then my dad, he grew up racing motocross professionally, did a bunch of really, really good things there. And so he's obviously always had it in his blood as well. And then recently, probably 10, 15 years ago, he kind of started into vintage cars. So many people are familiar with that, but it's kind of just you store old race cars and you go and race them at tracks, kind of some of these tracks behind me as well.
Yeah.
Race them all over the country. It's actually a really, really cool deal. So I kind of grew up around that. Started going to the racetrack with him, watching him, and kind of just sort of got the bug that way. I would always look forward to getting off school for a week to go to the racetrack and hang out with dad. So that was the big thing. And then I started into like indoor karting. We started doing that together. And then we made the switch to outdoor karting in probably 2013, 14-ish.
So that was the first deal. The first thing was you guys going indoor karting. We've heard that from a lot of people, and I know that us and, of course, in the karting industry as well, love to hear that, right? You find out, you go indoor karting, then you got to come outdoor karting afterwards. But so what was the indoor kart track name? I always like hearing that.
So it's Bluegrass Indoor Karting. I've actually worked there in recent years. So yeah, in Louisville, Kentucky, not as big of a racing state as Indianapolis.
That's true. Yep.
It was cool. I mean, I definitely owe a lot of them. It was really cool. It's a cool little story. There's a couple of drivers who have come out of there that are pretty successful now. So
Nice.
that's
So
kind of fun.
how
Yeah.
old were you when you first started outdoor karting?
So my first outdoor go-kart race, I actually found the picture the other day. It was a dirt oval race in Clark County, Indiana. So a little bit different
Wow.
from where we are now. But I think I was 12 when I did that.
Okay.
And then I did a few races there. And then the following year is when we kind of got started over here at Newcastle Motorsports Park with Top Kart USA with them. So I was about 13 when we got into the sprint karting road course racing.
And that's literally been like, you're 19 now. So we're talking about 6 years,
Yeah.
really, when you kind of got
Very,
into
very
it.
recent history.
Very recent history. And then you've been car racing for 3 or 4 years already. Anyways, so you're at Newcastle, and I think it's such a great racetrack. Those who know karting realize that Newcastle Motorsports Park, probably one of the hubs, the absolute hubs of karting, national level events, regional level events. The Dismores have done a great job, and it really is kind of one of the epicenters of karting, especially on the East Coast. When you get into that program, though, you quickly become attracted to potentially doing the big races, right? USPKS, SCUSA Pro Tour, whatever it may be. Give me some of your thoughts the first time you jumped up to the national level.
Yeah, so that's kind of been a theme throughout my whole racing career. I mean, even recently now, it's kind of been that whole kind of toss in the deep end and see if you'll sink or swim.
Yep.
So, I mean, I think I did 1, 2, maybe 3 club races at Newcastle before I ended up going to MRP for the first USPKS race. And that was kind of like a big eye opener, like huge change of pace, obviously.
Right.
And then soon after that, we were racing SCUSA, and then we were racing F4, and it's just kind of been that whole like toss in the deep end and stuff. And I think that's kind of what's progressed my learning curve so much. I mean, like you said, it's kind of crazy to think I've only really been racing for like 7 or 8 years, if that. So that's kind of been one of the things that I think has got me to where I am now, because that's the only way to really do it. We didn't really have time to mess around in karting for 5 years when you're starting at 12, because
you got to go. Yeah,
exactly.
What I like the fact that you did all your karting, you moved to cars, and you've actually come back. I still see you at a lot of kart racing events. You don't drive at all of them, because here's the question from David Cole. You might like this. He says, "I'm supposed to ask you about your record as a wrench in karting."
So
are you a pretty good mechanic?
I mean, I won SCUSA Summer Nationals with Braden Eves, so I think it was pretty good. It's awesome, and that's kind of got me into a couple other tuning jobs through the Will Power Kart program. Billy Vincent and Will himself have obviously put a lot into that and made it a really cool thing. But yeah, I still love the kart track. I didn't really get to grow up there. I never got burnt out of karting.
Yeah, I hear you saying.
I mean, that's where like my core group of friends were. For the longest time. I mean, being gone every single weekend in high school and stuff, it's kind of hard to have steady relationships with friends and stuff. So
I get it.
Yeah. So these were the only people I've seen. So it's always really good to go back and see everyone and hang out. And yeah.
But when you go back as a mechanic, it's interesting, right? Because you were a driver all the way up, right? You said you're a bit of a gearhead. You talked about that earlier, but you're a driver and you're focused on everything that happens in the seat. And yeah, you're thinking about it. But it's kind of cool when you get a chance to dive back in on the mechanic side, right? When it's just a totally different. To a certain extent, you probably got a feel for what your dad's like when he's watching you race, because you're on the sidelines watching your driver Braden Eves, and
it's the most helpless feeling ever.
Do about it, right?
Yep. Yeah. So it's a very, very helpless feeling. When everyone always says like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so much more nervous outside," I've always thought that's like BS. But you never really know until you know. So yeah. So yeah, it's definitely cool, but it makes the wins really, really sweet too.
I bet. All right, so let's talk about you briefly mentioned the fact that you're going up the ranks out of SCUSA, the top level national karting, but you go F4 racing. Tell me a little bit about how you got into it. What was the decision to go F4? Did you do some testing first? How did you kind of test the waters into car racing?
Sure. So I mean, essentially the whole goal when we even started karting was to get to car racing, because that's obviously what my dad did. And he actually did a little bit of USF 2000 racing late in his career. So we wanted to go the open wheel racing path. So that was like the main goal, was to get me enough karting to be able to get in cars, essentially. So once we kind of step into F4, opposed to, going to a team and writing a check, my dad's a businessman. He sees opportunity wherever it is. So he was kind of like, hey, we already have this. Because in vintage racing, it's kind of a do-it-yourself thing anyways, usually. And he's got a lot of really good people in his corner, in our corner now. that he knows through the vintage racing. So when we went to F4, instead of just writing a check and seeing it disappear, we got a car and started building it up and kind of repurposed the vintage team and upped it a little bit, up the level of it a little bit, and kind of made it into an F4 team. And that's how Abel Motorsports, sort of the current Abel Motorsports, started. So yeah, it was pretty cool, and it's really crazy to see how far we've grown now from that first F4 race, just with personnel and that whole program. But
what's interesting is that you have kind of gone back and forth between both the Road to Indy and the F4, F3 programs. You ran F4, and then you did a couple of races with Newman Walks Racing in USF 2018. Then you did the F3 Americas race in 2018. That was 17 with Newman Walks. And then you came back for Indy Pro and went hardcore Indy Pro in 2019. You and Parker Thompson had a great year. It's kind of been you've been kind of going back and forth. Was that by design? Was there a focus on certain tracks you wanted to run? What was the reason for going kind of back and forth?
At the time, it was sort of like get as much experience as we can. I mean, I'm obviously already behind. I started racing late, so it was like get in every car we can and try and do every race that you can do. Try and get me as much experience as possible. And I think that's going to kind of help, having gone back and forth from cars. It might have not been the best for the results necessarily at the time, but I think now kind of having that element and having that sort of level of maturity to be able to go from a car to a different car and things like that, I think will help further now in my career, now that it's more of a focus effort in Indy Pro 2000 and kind of able to push and focus on good results.
And let's talk about that first year of Indy Pro 2000 in 2019. I just went back and scanned some of your results and just looked at the consistency you had. We had a decent field then. You were almost always in the top 10. I want to say it was like 11 top 10s on the season or something like that. And of course, a 5th place finish at the Freedom 90, I think, which was massive as well, to be able to get that top 5 your first time at Lucas Oil Raceway. You look back at that year, 2019. What were your thoughts there?
Yeah, again, it was another one of those cases of kind of thrown into the deep end, because now it's going to be my 3rd year of racing cars, but I've raced F4 for 2 years and done 3 one-off F3 races. So I'm essentially an F4 driver going into Indy Pro 2000. Parker Thompson comes in, who is almost the polar opposite. Been in Indy Pro 2000, been in the Road to Indy forever. And that's one of the things. I mean, I owe a lot to him for kind of bringing me along. But again, it was just like a big step up. I mean, showing up at St. Pete, never been there before. And it was just kind of a building year. We ended up having some pretty good results. I mean, I think at Mid-Ohio, Parker and I locked out the 2nd row, which again, in this field was like a big field. You had Kyle Kirkwood, Rasmus Lind, Stingray Robb, Parker Thompson. So, I mean, a lot of very, very accomplished drivers. So I think that was one of definitely the biggest years where I took the biggest jump in performance, I think, from the beginning of that year.
Jacob, and the consistency, man, that's what I remember. I remember talking about that when I was doing the play-by-play, but to go back a couple of years later and look at the results, man, your consistency level throughout the season, no mistakes. And I always look for that in a young driver. You didn't make any crucial mistakes. You realized it was about experience. And man, to be able to get some of the results you did, I thought you probably were very happy with the way things ended up at the end of the season.
For sure. Yeah, it's funny you say no mistake. I don't know if you remember the Toronto weekend. That was a crazy one.
Did you have a bad weekend there?
Well, I was one of the first practice guys.
Turn 11?
Yeah, so
I don't remember that, but yes, okay. There was a couple of those. Weekend,
yeah, so just things like that to kind of get out of the way, but then kind of rebound and stuff like that. I think it was a very, very developmental year, I think, for sure, and I appreciate the compliment on the consistency. But.
So in 2020, you guys elected to do the full year in the Formula Regional America Series, right, with your own team, and had some good results there, podium finishes there as well. But then you come back to Indy Pro 2000 for 4 weekends. I thought it was so interesting because you come back and decide to run the ovals. Yeah. And that's not something we normally see, right? People don't run the ovals. Hey, I'm not going to run these, but I'll come back and run the ovals. Didn't quite have the luck you wanted at those ones. I know you had some engineering issues there. But then back to Mid-Ohio at the end of the season, you had that full year, of course, racing. You come back, and then at that second weekend we were at Mid-Ohio, you got a 7th and then a podium 3rd. That just had to have been the culmination of everything, to be able to finally say, you know what, I belong on the podium here. Yeah. Speak to that a little bit. What was it like when you got out of the car and you knew you were going to the podium?
Yeah, so that weekend was wild. I've been on podiums kind of in Formula Regional a
Yeah.
few times now, and even got a couple wins over there. So I always want. I feel like I belong in the podium on every single weekend we go to. That's always kind of the goal. But that weekend was crazy. So we're coming into this having never done a road course in this car, not tested or raced on one in a year and a half. That's both as a team and as a driver. Um, Everyone in the series had raced at this track and tested at this track just a month prior.
Yep.
And so we show up. I mean, we know we have a good setup there. We know I'm decent at that track, but we go and we have the test session. We have mechanical failure, practice, mechanical failure, qualifying one, mechanical failure, qualifying two, mechanical failure. We got to the point where we nearly rebuilt the whole entire car overnight because now we're going into race one. I'm obviously starting in the back because we didn't get to qualify. I haven't driven the car on the track yet, essentially. So, and yeah, race one was kind of my first real time on the track. And I think I went from like 13th, 14th, all the way up to 7th, which was big. We were talking about that earlier. It's a very hard track to pass on.
It's the hardest to pass on.
Exactly. And then the second race, obviously we had a bit of rain and stuff, and I was playing it safe and got a few spots there and was able to hang on to it and keep some pretty experienced guys at bay. It was just that was a very like out of nowhere kind of, I mean, after qualifying too, I was ready to quit. I'm like, do we even need to put this car on the grid right now? Because we haven't even tested. And that's one thing my dad always tells me is obviously like never give up and all that. But that was like a huge instance of it. Like anything can happen. So when we came out with a 7th place and a 3rd place, I think we had like the 4th most points out of anyone on that weekend. So it's things like that make them really sweet. But
I have to think that will probably fuel you and your momentum and your motivation to 2021 here, because obviously in the offseason, I think what we need to talk about now, and I'll bring up a couple of picks from Mid-Ohio I didn't use yet. You go into the offseason, and now you guys are like, okay, well, what are we going to do? We're doubling down. We're doing this. Bilardi Auto Racing ends up shutting down, and this veteran guy named John Bruner ends up coming up, essentially available. You guys pick him up. He's now going to run Abel Motorsports. What are your thoughts right now, thinking of a guy with that much experience? We're talking, players fourth ice. This guy's been around forever in the IndyCar paddock, Indy Lights paddock. He's with you guys now. Have you felt any impact just being in the shop with him at this point here, or is that more what you're going to see when you head out testing?
For sure. I mean, he's been to one of our tests, sort of just to evaluate the team and see where we need help and where we don't. But yeah, I mean, to be honest, Rob, it's going to kind of put a lot of pressure on me, and it's going to be a very no more excuses kind of deal. So I'm really looking forward to it. And with that, I've put a lot into myself because I know, I mean, there's no more saying, oh, it's a family team, like, oh, this and that. Like we have a very proper professional race team now.
Can we say that John's really a no excuses kind of guy too?
John is one of the most no excuses kind of guy in the whole entire Road Indy and IndyCar paddock for that matter. Yeah. So I'm really looking forward to it. I think I kind of need that a little bit for myself to kind of be pushed. So yeah, I mean, I'm really looking forward to it. I think you're going to kind of see come Barber a whole new Abel Motorsports on a lot of different fronts. So I'm really looking forward to it. It's definitely a very, very positive change. So
have you done a lot of testing yet? I know we're still what are we? Yeah, we're still really over 2 months away from the start of the season. Spring training's the first weekend of April. Have you guys done a lot of testing as of yet?
Honestly, not that much as of right now. Kind of with John, we're almost rebuilding the team. So we need to kind of get all that sorted before we go testing for the first time. I think we will here soon. At the end of last season, I think in like December we went to Barber and had a couple really good days there. Okay. But yeah, we're kind of waiting for that first test. And then we'll kind of hit the ground running because the car has a couple updates that they're changing to that as well with the engine and things like that. So it's honestly going to change the car a lot anyways. So that's kind of working in our favor. We're not getting too far behind the 8 ball right now, as we're just going to kind of wait until we're going to test the car we're going to race in this year. So yeah, I think it'll be good. I'm really looking forward to it.
Now, the release came out. Of course, you guys are coming back for this year. I believe in the release it said it was going to be a 2-car team. We know you're going to be there. We talked off air a little bit. You were tight-lipped. You're not telling me anything right now. You are in discussions potentially. Your dad and John with a driver that you would team with, maybe a couple of guys that could potentially be in the car. Any kind of a timeline for that? Of knowing who you could be racing with?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, hopefully within the next couple of weeks or month at the latest. But yeah, I think whoever it ends up being, it should be really good. I'm excited. I can't really give you, honestly, we don't have too many leads.
Yeah.
But I think we'll find someone who will fit the bill really well.
What are the expectations for 2021? What's going to be a good season for Jacob Abel?
I mean, again, like I said, kind of podiums every weekend
Back here
is going to
again?
be the goal. Yep,
Yeah,
that would be the goal.
that's
But
it.
yeah, we'll see. And I'm kind of going to go into, I mean, last year I went into the FR America's schedule coming off a couple of wins in 2019, ready to, if I'm not winning every race, I'm going to be upset. I mean, I'm going to go out and kind of enjoy it this year and sort of just see where we are halfway through the season and then talk about points and championships when we get there. I mean, we'll start out and just looking for consistent good results. Obviously, I want to win races, and I think it's very, very possible with our new operation.
Yeah.
I think I've come a long way as a driver. I think we could very well be in contention for wins at some of the tracks. So obviously I'd like to say that's the goal every weekend, but I mean, if we podium every race, that's how championships are made. So that'd be obviously the goal.
And that, Jacob, kind of leads into what you and I were talking about before as well. We didn't get a chance to do it yet here, so I think it's a perfect cap here. When we're talking about the road to Indy, it's about driver development, right? You don't always need to be winning races to get it done. The interesting thing is, if I were to ask you what your career aspiration is, you're not going to, I know we've talked about this before, you're not going to say, I want to win this championship, I want to win this championship. You're a guy with more of a mindset that I would have, and I just want to be able to have a professional career here. So whatever I'm doing, whether it's putting, wins on resumes, whatever it may be, as long as you're developing as a driver, wherever you're going to end up, you want to have success there. Is that, can you talk a little bit about what your career aspirations are?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, at the end of the day, I just want to get paid to drive a race car. I mean, that'd be awesome. But yeah, obviously there's a lot of different places that can happen in. I'm doing a lot of stuff with Acura, Honda,
Yep.
that brand. Just trying to build my relationship there. I mean, they have an awesome community. I did GT3 Academy last year, and then I'm going to actually have a partial season in that this year. So, kind of just trying to build a big foundation, trying to be as diverse of a driver as possible, being able to, get a call weekend if I have to go race this. Okay, I've raced a car similar to that before. It shouldn't be an issue. So, kind of just trying to do that. And again, yeah, still developing as a driver as much as I can. I mean, I'm in a very fortunate position where I kind of have consistency in my career right now at this time. So I'm kind of just using that to become the best driver I can. So when that doesn't happen, I'll be able to get rides wherever that may be. But yeah, again, just go ahead.
I was going to say, I think it'll be an interesting year for you. You're going to be in the Indy Pro car, then in the Acura, back and forth. That's good. That's something that'll push you as a driver as well, will it not?
100%. And I mean, we saw that the year I raced was teammates with Parker Thompson. I mean, there was one weekend where he was doing both at the same time. So yeah, it'll be interesting. But again, we kind of talked about it earlier. Going back and forth is kind of giving me that discipline to be able to sort of be able to do that. And I've driven the GT3 before, and I've driven the Indy Pro plenty before. So I know their tendencies. So it shouldn't be too hard after the first time doing it. But yeah, definitely should be pretty interesting for sure.
Here's a question. We'll cap it off from Casey Ackerman. He says, actually, it's a statement. Abel Motorsports needs an Indy Lights car. I expect you'd like to drive one.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to drive one. Obviously, we now have a pretty good program where it'd be kind of easy to implement that.
That's true,
with John Bruner. I mean, we could almost be a Belardi Autosport right now, or Belardi Racing rather. So yeah, we'll see. We're kind of gonna see where this year goes, and that'd definitely be an option, but no promises for sure. Obviously, the bills get a lot bigger as you take steps up the ladder. So we'll see how it goes. Again, just kind of playing everything by ear.
Jacob, I appreciate you joining me here. Obviously, again, we want people following and watching here on the Road to Indy Insider Live, making sure they get a chance to know who you are and be able to follow you throughout your journey, wherever that ends up taking you, whether it's IndyCar, whether it's sports cars. But we know for this year, it'll be Indy Pro 2000. A lot of great events for us this year. Is there one track, before we cap off, is there one track you can't wait to get back to in 2021?
It's got to be Mid-Ohio. I mean, as many times as we've been there, it never gets old. Mid-Ohio is always going to be have a special place in my heart. It was the first place I ever drove a race car in the first place. spent a lot of time there, know the people who own it and run it really well. So
That's awesome.
definitely be Mid-Ohio. But yeah, I mean, it's a great schedule this year. Like you said, obviously street courses and stuff like that are super fun to me, because it kind of levels the playing field. No one has 1,000 laps on St. Petersburg. So
that's very true.
so it should be pretty good.
All right. How do people follow you on social media? Let's wrap up with that.
Yeah, so Instagram is my main one, at Jacob Abel. Pretty simple. Then Facebook, Jacob Abel Racing. Twitter, Jacob Abel Racing as well. So all those, please follow me.
Any sponsors you want to pimp out right now?
Yeah, I mean, Abel Motorsports is obviously the big one. It's always going to be Honda Racing, HPD. They've helped me out a ton this year, so always big props to them. But yeah.
Well, dude, thank you so much for taking time here on a Monday afternoon. I appreciate it. Have an awesome week, and good luck when testing gets underway. Thanks
so much, Rob. I'll talk to you later.
There is, folks. Jacob Abel, an incredible young driver. We'll bring it back here. Let's drop him into the back. Again, this rapid curve for this young driver. We talked about 6 years, really, from going from karting at Newcastle Motorsports Park after doing some indoor karting, right into top-level national racing in the United States Pro Kart Series, then the SuperKarts USA Pro Tour, into F4, and he's been driving so much different stuff. The F4 car, the F3 car, Indy Pro 2000. In 2017, he got a chance to sample that USF 2000 car as well. So we never know where it's going to go, but this is going to be a really cool year, I think, for Jacob Abel. He'll be definitely one to watch. He's had success on the ovals before. That top 5 finish at the Freedom 90 a couple years ago, I think that bodes well when we get back there this May. But also that success at Mid-Ohio at the end of the season last year, a 7th in that opening race, a 3rd in the second race. After all the crap that they went through all weekend long, he was able to turn around. And that's kind of a test of a young man to be able to keep that focus, right? And be able to come back, and he was rewarded with a 3rd place finish. Add John Bruner to Abel Motorsports. We'll see what teammate he ends up getting and how they complement each other as well. Abel Motorsports could be a pretty impressive dark horse throughout the 2021 season. Thank you so much for joining us here, folks, on the Road to Indy Insider Live. More announcements have come out. I'll grab a couple more drivers. We're going to try to get another driver for Thursday. Not sure who it's going to be at this point. And then we'll go Monday and Thursday of the following week as well. I'll tell you, this is cool because every level of the Road to Indy, we're seeing like 10% growth, potential for 25 to 28 USF 2000. More stuff's happening in Indy Pro right now. We could have as many as 18 to 20 cars. It's crazy how things are coming together late. And then right now, as we know, 12 drivers confirmed for Indy Lights, a couple more potentially coming in to make it 14 at St. Petersburg. That would be, I think, the high water mark for Barber, rather, the opening round for all 3 of the categories. Otherwise, we're done here. Big thanks to Jacob Abel for joining us. Folks, thank you for tuning in once again. My name's Rob Howden. Book it.